All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the FearCast. This is the podcast dedicated to OCD and anxiety spectrum disorders and getting your life back. I'm your host, Kevin Foss. I'm a licensed therapist specializing in OCD and anxiety disorders. Thank you all so much for joining me for this episode. So for those of you who are new, this is a question and answer based podcast where you can send in your own questions, and I will read them, consider them, and likely put them up on a future episode. Go over, check me out at fearcastpodcast.com. You can submit a question that way. You can go over to Instagram, and I'm FearCast Podcast over there. You can send me your audio question there. Certainly, you can send it over through the website as well. But if you want to send in an audio question, that goes to the tippity top of the list, and that will be on the next recorded episode or as soon as I can get to it. But they tend to cut the line. So first off, everybody, thank you all so much. I'm going to try to release this one a little early. I'm recording on Wednesday, so I'm hoping it will get released on Friday, which is Valentine's Day. So I hope everybody is stressing about that and worrying about that or feeling wildly alone and terrible about themselves. I'm assuming that's what the spectrum is, probably. But and for all you weirdos out there who are just anticipating a lovey-dovey, wonderful day, good for you. Good for you, I suppose. But today I'm going to be talking a little bit about relationships, relationship OCD, relationship anxieties, but perhaps not in the typical fashion, but we're going to be going over a little bit of something anyhow. And so I'll read that question from Teddy in just a moment. But first thing, I want to say two things. So number one, if you have a moment and you're interested more in relationship OCD and the intersection with the stressors that come with Valentine's Day, go over to my website. I released a new article on the Cal OCD, so the California OCD and Anxiety Treatment Center's website. That's my private practice. And on the blog, I put out an article that talks a little bit about the overlap between those two, the stressors that can come with Valentine's Day, and the expectations that come with it for various people, and just for those with relationship OCD, what they can do to challenge that, to work with it, to engage the relationship as best they possibly can, and to kind of work with their own anxiety while trying to make the best possible day and make the best possible relationship. So something worth checking out. The other thing to do, if you haven't done it already, and I'm going to plug a fantastic website, though obviously in the podcasting world, she is my enemy and my nemesis. She is not. But go check out Kimberly Quinlan's new podcast episode. She talks very vulnerably about, yes, I'm saying that right, about this past year, and about being diagnosed with OCD and PTSD. And she shares a lot about what this past year has been for her, the ups and downs and difficulties and successes. And I thought something that was in it that was so beautiful and so beautiful was that she was willing to share this. She's not completely out of the woods with things, but, she was willing to kind of say, what her story was like. And I love that it illustrates, or it highlights a reality for a lot of folks is that OCD can fly under the radar. For folks who are living life and having anxiety and having distress and wondering what the heck's going on, and they say, well, I've never been diagnosed with OCD, and it's probably not that, because diagnosis for OCD typically happens in adolescence and in your early 20s and all that stuff. And for Kimberly, it didn't. And also, I think what's really important is that she is an OCD expert. She speaks on OCD all over the world. She has a podcast. She has the CBT school. She is very well known for knowing how to treat OCD, and yet it slipped by, and it can mask as something else, and it can be it doesn't often show up as, oh man, I'm washing my hands a bunch, or oh man, I'm ruminating and asking reassurance over here a bunch. It can be sneaky. So and also, most importantly, her willingness to engage, her willingness to lean in, knowing what to do. She talks about her fear about doing ERP. Who out there has not faced the world of ERP and said, I don't want to do it? she said it too. So if you have a moment, listen to it. It's like 40 minutes or something like that. I listened to it on 1.5 speed. It's great. So go check it out. All right. Without further ado, let's jump into this. So I'm going to read the question and we'll get into it. So this comes from Teddy. So Teddy says, "Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day. Me and my partner are in an open relationship, which I love. We've been together for 2 years and live together. However, sometimes my brain gets preoccupied with the thought that he's planning to find a different partner, to the point that I feel a sense that I need to look at his phone and his texts to people I already know he talks to. And these people are like friends and other people, etc. I haven't for the past month, which is great, but every day feels like a challenge to avoid these compulsive thoughts. I'm always searching if I actually love him or if he loves me. When I'm calm, I can feel confident and say that we love each other a lot. But when we're separated, I spiral. He's always very good at setting boundaries and working with me, but I always feel like OCD is in the forefront of our relationship. Do you have any tips to navigate this situation? Also, I've never been on meds, but I really want to, and wonder if you know of any that have helped. Thank you again." So, Teddy, thank you so much for this question. And this is a different type of question that we typically do, and not one that is typically talked about. So within an open relationship, for those who are unaware, an open relationship is one where there is a primary couple, so two people in a relationship, and then the relationship is open, meaning it's not monogamous. It is polyamorous. There are a lot of other terms that you can have for it, but in an open relationship, the couple is open to flirting with, having sex with other people. Now, that may not be the typical expected structure of a relationship that we would talk about, or one that maybe relationship questions or doubts or worries may come in. And some people may even say, well, they are seeing other people. They're open to. They've explicitly said this is something that is part of the structure of the relationship. So of course this would be an obsession. Now, I want to talk a little bit about that in a minute, but we're going to get into this, and I'll also say this. And sarcastically. And I said this sarcastically to a friend of mine just a moment ago, and they didn't know I was being sarcastic, but I'll say it here. Finally, someone is messaging me, the monogamous, straight, white, heterosexual male, about open poly relationships. Finally, my expertise is being accessed. Not a great joke. Didn't come out well here either. Don't know why I said it. Point is, I'm being asked a question for which, or about a community, about a structure of relationship that I do not ascribe to myself. But you know what? A lot of people in a lot of different walks of life have OCD. Now, here's the thing that I love about this. I did a bunch of research and done reading, and I've listened to a lot of stuff about relationships, and they've talked about open relationships. So I have a working definition of it and a kind of an idea of it. But this is not coming from personal experience. But you know what? There's a ton about this that applies to everyday monogamous relationships. And I think there's something important, and I'm going to read a little bit from an article that I came across, and I'll post that to the episode page, that I think can be really helpful as folks are navigating questions about, gosh, what if they find a better partner? What if they find a different partner, right? So that can be one of the worries. So for those who are uninitiated, relationship OCD is OCD, so obsessive compulsive disorder, focused on relationships. Now, this can be pretty broad. It can be relationships, romantic relationships. It can also be relationships between friends, relationships between you and your boss, relationship between you and your dog. It can be all sorts of relationships. There have been some argument, and I think there's some reasonable argument for this, that it can be expanded, even include religious scrupulosity, which would be anxiety about one's relationship or one's practice of their faith. So it can be a relationship OCD about your relationship with God. So it can be relatively broad, and there might be some people out there who are going to disagree with that type of definition. That's fine. You can disagree with me all you want, but I think there are elements within this that we can talk about from how to navigate, from the nuts and bolts of how to navigate and manage an open relationship, as well as navigating relationships in general, but also how to incorporate and address OCD where it is. So my general stance when it comes to relationship OCD is that it's going to kind of be this combination between genuine relationship concerns or responded to with obsessions and compulsions, right? Or compulsions are a means to try to gain certainty, gain confidence, gain connection, or gain assurance within that connection. And ultimately, as we all know, compulsions, the biggest lie that OCD has is that compulsions will actually help, and they ultimately don't. There's big promise with compulsions, but terrible follow through, right? There's big promises that if you just do this, if you just look this up, if you just research or snoop or look at the website or look at their texts, you'll get all the information that you want and you'll feel secure. But then the other thought comes up. Well, what if I missed a text? What if there's another one that came in? What if they deleted texts? What if it's a whole other person? What if they're talking in code? What if they're communicating via email? It's endless, right? Or just even in the way that a text is written. Anyway, you get the idea. So I want to kind of go through a little bit of this and kind of pull out some things that I think are important. So I think it's important in this. And by the way, the article that I published about relationship OCD and Valentine's Day kind of goes into a little bit of what I'm going to talk about here, about being intentional about the relationship that you're in, despite doubt, despite concern, despite worry, and despite uncertainty. There is an important point to recognize the determination to be in a relationship and to make efforts to refocus on the health and the primacy of that relationship. Now, that counts for monogamous relationships. That counts for polyamorous relationships. You're focusing on the primacy of the primary relationship. Now, if you're monogamous, it's the relationship, but you get the idea, right? What relationship OCD sometimes does is it distracts you. It says, what if I would be happier with somebody else? Gosh, what if they would be happier with somebody else? What if I'm with the wrong person and I should be with somebody else? Gosh, what is it with their eyes? Why do they look like that? Oh, gosh, what if I was happier with someone with curly hair, straight hair? There's an episode we did a long time ago about someone's obsession about curly hair and straight hair. Y'all can go find it. Anyways, it can focus on anything, and it presents this doubt. What if this is the wrong relationship for me and I should break up? Now, oftentimes that question brings on that doubt and that concern. It's like, well, no, I feel good in this relationship. I want to be here, but what if, right? Okay. So first thing I want to address, Teddy, is that, I wonder if there's, there can be some underlying maybe trauma that informs this obsession. And that's something to address and something to talk to a therapist if you're working through this or with them on this subject. So you can think about, like, is there a story or an event that happened to you or to someone you know that's contributing to this, right? Was there a previous breakup? Did you hear of a story of somebody who, they were in this very long-term committed relationship and then they found somebody better and that left that person feeling rejected, right? Treatment can ultimately be different if there is something that's happened and the narrative is kind of built around this trauma response, right? So, like, how is the story the same as what you've experienced or what you've heard, and how is it different from a previous relationship or a previous time, right? If something did happen in your past or past relationships that are contributing to this, how what are some commonalities? Sure, but also how are they very different? Is it different in the way that they treat you, the way that you treat them? Is there some structural differences to it that can help say this situation is different from that one, and I can't hold this relationship to the same rules as that one, right? What are some other stories or events that contribute to the feared story about being left or about being replaced or kind of deemed insufficient or kind of rejectable, right? Where do those stories come in? How is that being fed into your relationship, if it is? And maybe looking into ways that's impacting you, because that's gonna direct kind of where you go and what you do, and also maybe what the core fear ultimately is within this. So, so before I really jump off into some more other specific things, I'm going to read a quote that I found in an article. Again, this is the same article that I was referencing earlier. Because I think that this statement is ultimately true for monogamous and polyamorous relationships. And there's an element in this that it's not romantic. It's not fun to a certain degree, but there's something in it that's truthful and beautiful if we can apply it. All right. So I'll just read it and then y'all can disagree with me. So the writer says, the truth is, I don't know. Let me back up. So this article is written from somebody who started an open relationship. So they're in a relationship, and I think they were in it for like 7-something years, and they electively chose to open up the relationship. They say they were talking about opening up the relationship, and especially at times when their sex life or kind of the relationship got a little stale, and rather than opening it at that point, they made the choice to work on the relationship, and open the relationship when it was healthy, when they wanted to be in the relationship, and opening it up was a choice. Was a choice rather than something to try to fix. Okay, so with that being said, let me go on. So the truth is, I don't know he will find someone better than me, but can you know that in a monogamous relationship either? No. In fact, the answer, after a year of making mistakes and communicating about them in the ways that we never did before, is that it's liberating to accept that. It's freeing to see the end, because in seeing the end, you have a reason to keep choosing the relationship, right? I'll say it again. I love this. It says, again, we don't have a promise or a guarantee that our partner or us are not going to find someone better. We don't. And in fact, when we have maybe the threat of, or the communication of, or the thought of the end of a relationship, and that seems really scary, we have to also accept that is a possibility. It may not be fun, but rather than wasting time trying to fight against the end or the breakdown of a relationship, accepting the reality that it could. It also could not, right? So instead of getting caught in that battle of is it or will it or how do I prevent it, saying there's the possibility of. So I love it. They say it's freeing to see the end, because in seeing the end, you have a reason to keep choosing the relationship. Now, people will disagree on that, and that's fine. But what I think is great is that there's the thought about whether or not you can find a better partner, and they might. But rumination and checking and avoidance and other efforts to control for control and for certainty, it isn't going to prevent this. It isn't going to prevent it. So instead, we can focus on the primacy of the primary relationship and work to ensure the health of that, right? So, Teddy, what I'm going to kind of be talking about here is, what are you doing to focus on the relationship itself, to acknowledge what you're doing to contribute to the bond between you and your partner, knowing that we don't know if they're going to find someone better. We don't know if you're going to find someone better either. It's possible, but it hasn't happened yet. All right. Okay. So first off, let's look at some of the things you said. So you said he's very good at setting boundaries and working with me, but I always feel like OCD is in the forefront of our relationship. Okay. So within any relationship, And also especially within polyamorous relationships. Again, to the best of my knowledge, not that I'm the world's leading expert on this, but from my knowledge and understanding of polyamorous relationships is there needs to be rules set. There's a discussion because you're saying we're not fitting within the structure of a typical monogamous relationship. We have to choose our own adventure. So what we have to do in this is to say, what are the rules? What are we doing? How are we going to move forward with this in the best possible way? So as those rules are hammered out and worked through, and there are some resources and books out there that can help walk you through it, help have you kind of guide you through those conversations and what a polyamorous or an open relationship could look like and could include and how you'll work through problematic things, and that can be considered. But again, these are things that we do in monogamous relationships too. How do we ensure the health and protect the safety the safety of the relationship within a monogamous relationship too? Okay, but he says he's always been good at setting boundaries. Now I'm going to take that in the best possible way and say that he has been good at discussing the relationship and discussing how to make that relationship the best you possibly can. Now, as you set up those rules, you work towards abiding by those rules, and that they may need to be continually reevaluated. And that comes through communication, and that comes through working things out. But again, that's going to be within any relationship too. Now, my question is your partner showing themselves to be a kind of a trustworthy and reliable person in that process? Are they following the rules? Are you following the rules too? From what that agreement is, are you making those rules for engagement of an open relationship? And for anybody else out there, are you engaging within the relationship, and are they showing themselves to be trustworthy in the relationship? Now, why I bring that up is we can have this we can reflect back on in the moments of anxiety and freaking out that in this moment right now is all we know. I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. I don't know what's going to happen later today. But I know right now in the history of the relationship is safe. It has worked. They've expressed trust, you've expressed trust and commitment to the relationship. So we're going to move forward with that as best we can. And isn't that what we do anyways, right? I trust that my car will work. I trust that my child, when I get home, is not going to try to murder me because historically speaking, she's said, Daddy, I love you, and I don't want to murder you in your sleep. She's 7, she's precocious. But anyways, she has said that, so I'm going to trust her. And I've also said, honey, I love you too, and you're so wonderful, and I will also not try to murder you in your sleep. So we have this wonderful agreement and relationship between us, and we're going to trust that, right? Until there's reason to not trust that, but that's a separate conversation. So we want to think about what are the rules and have you set them up, and can we use that in your back pocket as helpful things? So in other parts of that thing, or in your question, Teddy, you said, let's see here. However, you said this, my brain gets preoccupied with the thoughts that he's planning to find a different partner to the point that I feel like you need to snoop and all this stuff. Let's see here. So, I'm getting ahead of myself. I'll go with this anyways. So there are certainly some exposures you can do, but I think a lot of what we can do that's more helpful to start is looking at what compulsions you're engaging with, either overt compulsions or covert compulsions, right? Overt are the ones that you do externally, right? Like grabbing his phone, looking through. Covert compulsions are the ones that happen internally. Are you checking how much you love him? Are you evaluating how you feel during certain times? Are you feeling a level of are you searching for attraction? Are you searching for arousal? Are you gauging what they're doing and saying and acting and saying, all right, does that look like love? Does that look like they're just kind of disinterested? Do they, when they talk to somebody else, do they look like they're more in love? And you're that can be exhausting, right? So first and foremost, catching yourself when you're doing compulsions and how you're doing compulsions, and being honest with yourself about the purpose of the thing that you're doing. Are you reflecting on your lovey-dovey feelings because you're reflecting on the lovey-doveys? Or are you reflecting on it because you're going, I got to know, I got to be sure, I got to make sure that I'm okay, they're okay, right? Be honest with yourself and catch yourself. Wave that big red flag and say, hey, I'm doing this compulsion I ought not to, okay? And then you can practice a determination to resist compulsions, a determination to practice delaying tactics, right? So instead of saying, all right, I want to check his phone. I'm not going to right now. I'm going to check later tonight. I'm going to check tomorrow. I'm going to check in a week, whatever you can manage. And then what you're doing is you're letting that anxiety pass. You're letting that feeling, you're letting your brain get distracted. You're letting that urgency pass. And during that time, you take some breaths, you relax your body, and you try to re-engage in something that's more valuable, more meaningful. And what I'd encourage you to do is to engage in the relationship, have a conversation, engage with that if you can, if that's possible, right? But, not as a reassurance thing, right? Ask them, hey, how was your day, right? What was the best part about your day? What do you want to do this weekend? Hey, do you want to watch this show? Yeah, just stuff. And in the course of that, the goal would be to redirect your focus back to the relationship, not on what's going on, right? Now, some relationships have a don't ask, don't tell within an open relationship, right? You don't want to know what's happening, who they're with, who they're dating, who they're not dating, who they're sleeping with, who they're not, whatever the case may be. But that's part of the rules, right? Do you have an agreement for it or not? Can you have a conversation? And is it necessary in that moment to have that conversation? Or ultimately, is it compulsive? And you can say, I'm going to resist that compulsion and be open to that possibility that maybe they found someone to replace me, right? And it feels bad to think about that idea being replaced. But we can also acknowledge that that's that feeling that is within all relationships, that possibility of being replaced. And reflecting back on, there's no evidence for it, right? Where's that evidence for my being replaced? Have they shown me anything? Is there something different? Is there genuinely something different? Not the inkling or the possibility. Have they said, I think this person's better than you? That would be pretty good evidence, right? But them going like, noticing somebody. It's not the same, right? And again, it can kind of be fraught, right? So there can be some complications within an open relationship. And this is not me saying it's bad or that don't do it, but like with anything, there are going to be pros and cons with everything. So we can anticipate that there is the possibility of the other person catching feelings or you catching feelings, and you kind of keep an eye on that. All right. So, by the way, let's see, where is that? I found that it disappeared probably. Oh no, did it? It did. That's upsetting. Let's see here. Maybe I can find it real quick as I'm talking about this. There was a book that I saw that was talking about open relationships, and there was a whole book talking about security of open relationships. It was like polyconfidence, polyamorous affection. I don't know, something like that. I don't know. This is not good, and I'm wasting my time. I had to restart my computer, and all the tabs that I had open all disappeared. So all my good resources that I had went away, but I do have that other article that I was talking about. All right, let me go on to this next bit, and then I'll read one final quote from the article. So you said, every day feels like a challenge. To avoid these thoughts. I'm searching if I'm actually in love with him. We kind of talked about that. When I'm calm, I can confidently say that we love each other, but when we are separated, I spiral. So my question there is like, well, what's happening when you're away? Because when you're there, things feel pretty good, but when you're not, the thoughts return. So is it that you're not getting a certain amount of attention? You're not getting a type of attention? You're not getting the emotional reinforcement? Or you're simply not having distraction from those thoughts or those fears of inadequacy. So it sounds like kind of you're flooded with the thoughts about the end of the relationship when you're separated, when you're not there. But this is an opportunity to anticipate that, to accept the inability to predict the future, and instead to reflect on the confidence of what they've expressed in the past about the relationship, what you two have worked out, and then to enact and act on that level of trust that you both are being truthful about what you said, right? Furthermore, can you practice labeling those thoughts? Can you practice labeling the thoughts, the sounds, the images, the stuff you saw on TV, the thing you heard on the radio, the triggers that brought on that doubt in the first place, and the thing that's kind of enticing you back into this doubt, back into this obsessive thought? Can you label that as an invitation to doubt and compulsion. And then instead of engaging with it, shift and choose to return back kind of to trusting the evidence that you have and the lack thereof, right? Shifting back to that relationship, saying there's no evidence at this point. We've agreed to this relationship structure. And there's the possibility, but again, there's the possibility in a monogamous relationship too. So we're practicing a lot of uncertainty. Now, there of course is the option of doing scripting, the option of watching movies, etc., reading articles about people who have been in open relationships and had those folks, catch feelings for the other person and end the relationship. Those are articles out there too. There are movies out there too. There are scripts that you could write that are specific to you. And it can be helpful in a sense to write those and to sit with that feeling, but also to say, this is a thought, it's a sad thought, but it's also not one that my snooping is going to help with, right? So we're kind of making space for that thought and that feeling and saying, my compulsion is not solving this or doing anything about it, so therefore I'm going to let go of my urge to do it. And that's going to be hard and a struggle, but that's part of that process. And by reading it, hopefully the goal is to kind of get used to it or tolerate its existence and to show that you can have this thought and not engage with snooping, asking, checking, etc. Okay. All right. So I'm going to just read one last paragraph. And this is, in fact, the last paragraph in the article. But again, it kind of speaks to the relationship, the primacy of the relationship, and kind of refocusing back on it. So they go on to say, so the point is that non-monogamy is actually about care. It's about seeing your partner and yourself as someone separate to you who has desires and feelings and emotions that they want to and should be able to share with other people, not just you. For us, at least, it's created a dynamic of tantalizing flux. One, where sometimes you feel lonely, sometimes you feel powerful, sometimes you feel more in love than ever. But in understanding these dynamics that whirl around inside and between us both, it feels more likely than ever that neither of us will find a better partner. Because if we can learn with empathy and compassion, selflessness, to understand each other in what is deemed such a testing situation, if we can both let each other go for an evening every now and then, the reunion feels so much sweeter because you come home to someone who is committed to working hard to see you, to make space in their complicated emotional life for yours and vice versa. And that feels more, or that feels like more commitment, more love than anything I've experienced before. So again, they're acknowledging this kind of this whirlwind of feelings and the highs and lows of this and the uncertainty of it, but their commitment back to this person. Now, for a monogamous individual, we can kind of say the same thing. Within that world of uncertainty, hopefully you and hopefully they are committing back to the primacy of your relationship and trying to make that the best they possibly can and letting go of these doubts and concerns and questions and worries and fears and possibilities that are possibilities. They're possible. But it doesn't mean they're facts. There doesn't mean they're probabilities. They're possibilities that suck and you don't like them and you don't want them. But we have to acknowledge them. And again, what's more functional for us to deal with or to do in light of it? To sit and worry and stress, or to reflect back and say, I'm going to make this the best relationship I can, accepting the uncertainty, but focus on today. So go out there. Enjoy your Valentine's Day as best you possibly can. Romance, polyamory, we're doing it all. Anyways, go out there, take a risk. I don't even know what I say anymore. Take a risk, challenge yourself, and don't take your brain too seriously, y'all. Have a good day. Thank you for listening to the FearCast. If you would like your question answered on a future episode, please click on the Submit a Question link at FearCastPodcast.com. If you would like your question answered sooner, please send me a recording of your question to questions@FearCastPodcast.com or by sending me an audio message through Instagram by DMing me at FearCastPodcast on Instagram. If you like the FearCast, please write a review on your podcast platform of choice. Please remember that the FearCast is not a substitute for psychotherapy. If you need a little bit of help in your recovery, please go over to fearcastpodcast.com and click on the Find Help link, and there's going to be some information for you there. So until next time, take a risk, challenge yourself, and don't take your brain too seriously. Bye.